Good evening, everybody. Is this working? Yes, it is. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our October Cabinet meeting. I have a couple of practical issues to highlight. First of all, we have no fire drill planned tonight, so if there is a fire alarm, please make your way out of the building in a calm and orderly fashion as guided by staff. People with mobility issues should gather in the foyer on the right-hand side as you leave the Mancroft room, near to the balustrade, where assistance will be provided. Toilets are at the far end of the corridors, either side of the council chamber, ladies to the right as you leave, and gents to the left. And this meeting is being live streamed on the council's YouTube channel. So item 1, apologies. Have we received any apologies? Leonie, please.
None received.
Thank you. Secondly, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from members of Cabinet? No, thank you. Thirdly, public questions and petitions. There have been no public questions or petitions. And then item 4, questions to Cabinet members. There have been no questions to Cabinet members received. Item 5, the minutes of the previous meeting. These have been circulated. Can we please confirm that these are an accurate record of the meeting on the 11th of September? Do I have a proposer? Yeah, and the seconder? Yeah. Thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Item 6 is Scrutiny Committee recommendations to Cabinet and the response to motion 9D and the petition. This item is contained in the supplementary agenda. Could I please ask Councillor Wright to introduce the Scrutiny Committee recommendations?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I won't read over every recommendation, but what I would like to say is it was a very good piece of scrutiny. I thought we had the opportunity to ask questions of some external witnesses who came in, and I thought that was very useful for the committee. Councillor Galvin chaired the second half of the committee at that meeting, and I chaired the first half on SWEP and winter provision. The recommendations for that are laid out on page 4 of the supplementary agenda, and I note that Cabinet's responses are on Appendix 2 for that. So that's all I'll say by way of introduction to that item. Yeah, and if you'd like, Councillor Galvin, we could say something on the second part of the meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
please do.
Thank you. So as Councillor Wright said, we looked at the severe weather emergency protocol and then an update on the review of welcoming asylum seekers and refugees. And we had a really welcome progress update from Beatrice Tomorrow from the Bridge Plus, from Yoli Southgate, Mancroft Advice Project, and Ben Scarlett and Ruth Stokes from Norfolk Community Advice Network. And it was really good to have the detailed and considered input of those representatives. I want to note that a lot of time was taken up in the section of the meeting that I chaired dealing with issues around homelessness provision, which participants did make very clear they would have preferred to be dealt with during the preceding item. And that would have then allowed a fuller discussion of the issues around refugee issues. I think it was a scheduling problem with the two items. So I want to reflect that that was said. And on the recommendations, I think I really thank Cabinet for agreeing to meet regularly on taking forward the recommendations in the NCAN report, which was also they wanted to have dealt with in the first section because it was an overlapping topic basically, and provide an updated report on that to scrutiny. I'd really like to ask if we can get in touch with those, if we can get in touch with those organisations that weren't heard from in the second half as much as they could have been, because a lot of time was taken up dealing with some of the first half, just to check if they felt able to input effectively. So, it may be that they say yes. And schedule a follow-up if necessary for other experiences felt by refugees, because it seemed to me we didn't have time to address it in the meeting in full. Obviously, this council's done a lot of work on becoming a refugee-friendly council and wants to progress to that status. So I think we want to make sure that they get a chance to do that.
that would be a matter for a subsequent scrutiny meeting, I think. And so, and James, as chair, would you be happy for that to happen?
Well, I think at our next meeting, we can talk about this, because now we've got your response, we can consider the recommendations that Cabinet has made this evening and determine as a committee whether there's any further action for that. I think that'd be perfectly appropriate. Thank you.
So I have the motion and the petition here. So I will read out the resolve section of the motion, and then I shall read out the petition so everyone is aware of it. That is the procedure, I'm told. So quite a long resolve section, so brace yourselves for this. This council resolves to 1. Ensure that Norwich City Council SWEP is brought in line with the Homeless Link SWEP toolkit published in 2023 in preparation for winter this year, and that it addresses the concerns raised in the media and by advocacy groups last winter, including by A, ensuring adequate and appropriate provision to meet the needs of a diverse group of users on every day and night of the week, including by ensuring that sufficient extra capacity is available in case a decision is made not to operate the winter night shelter this winter, and by ensuring that shelter can be accessed throughout the night. B, working towards single room accommodation for everyone in need of shelter. C, ensuring provision is available for everyone, including those outside of usual eligibility and entitlement frameworks, such as those restricted due to immigration status, and including those who have recently become homeless, and not only those considered to be entrenched homeless. D, ensuring that verification of rough sleeping is not used as a barrier to offering SWEP provision. E, moving away from the narrow standard 3-night criteria for triggering SWEP, whereby SWEP is activated only when these 3 consecutive nights of freezing temperatures are predicted, and instead, F, taking a common sense approach where SWEP is activated whenever there is likely to be an acute need, even if this is for less than 3 consecutive days, taking into account weather warnings, near freezing temperatures, rain, snow, wind chill, gales and heat, with a focus on feels like temperatures, as well as consulting cold health alerts. G, taking an approach that prioritises risk minimisation where different weather forecasts make different predictions. H, setting out clear timescales for any SWEP activation and establishing actions for agencies to take, such as notifying relevant clients. I, offering homelessness provisions during extreme hot weather, recognising that death rates amongst homeless people are higher during hot weather than cold weather, including by publishing a list of designated daytime shelters available during periods of extreme heat that provide water, sun hats, sunscreen and other necessities. 2, explore the possibility of installing water fountains in central locations such as Norwich Market and the Prince of Wales Road to ensure everyone has easy access to water during periods of extreme heat. 3, make detailed information on Norwich City Council's policy on severe weather arrangements available on its website. 4, to ensure that information on whether SWEP is or will be activated is easily accessible and swiftly available through a multitude of channels, which could include emails to partner organisations, local media, council social media, digital displays, and a toggle or similar feature on Norwich City Council website, so that relevant partner organisations and service users can easily access this information as soon as it becomes available. 5, set out what capacity is at the winter night shelter and to record uptake, any excess demand and the reasons given to clients and or partners for any potential rejections going forward. 6, develop procedures for liaising with the police whenever SWEP is activated so that the latter directs homeless people towards the relevant provision and shelter. 7, write to the Secretary of State for Housing, Communities and Local Government to express concern about the lack of sufficient long-term government funding for local authority homelessness services and social housing. 8, write to the Under Secretary of State at the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government to express concern about the insufficient provision of care assessments and services for people sleeping rough. 9, liaise with Norfolk County Council to ensure care assessments are easily and swiftly accessible for people sleeping rough to facilitate their access to specialist regulated care provision. And 10, document any cases of death of people presenting as homeless in Norwich, including those in exempt accommodation, recording as a minimum information on the setting, date, cause of death, accommodation type, age, gender, ethnicity, and immigration status. I'll now read the petition that was presented. Norwich City Council's policy for accommodating homeless people during extreme weather is out of date and dangerous. This petition is calling on the council to change this. We are calling on Norwich City Council to, firstly, confirm that overnight winter shelters will be open every day of the week over the winter period. Urgently review all the severe weather emergency protocol so that it takes into account all forms of extreme weather, is based on feels like temperature, and brings rough sleepers in before we reach freezing temperatures. Keep all homeless people safe from freezing temperatures and extreme weather over this winter period, including refugees who are disproportionately impacted by failures in homelessness services. So could I ask, I believe it's the second of the motion, to make any comments on the Cabinet response. You have 2 minutes. It's Councillor Catt, I believe.
Thank you. There we go. I want to thank all of the organisations which put together the Winter Homelessness in 2023 report and their attendance at the scrutiny committee and the evidence that they gave. It was probably one of the most helpful things that came out of that scrutiny meeting, and it was great to hear it from them. But I also really want to thank Councillor Jones, Davina, Hayley, Charlotte, and all officers that were involved on the issue, and for their work and also their openness on the topic, and for being invited myself to come here and comment. It's really refreshing to see, and thank you as well for accepting a number of the scrutiny recommendations that you've really appreciated. And I think one of the key ones for me is around incorporating the homeless link toolkit into our SWEP policy and strive to meet that best practice. And we've seen with other local authorities that where they have done that, they have really good policies. And one kind of shining star of that is Oxfordshire. It's flexible, it's person-centred, very cooperative with homeless organisations and other local authorities around it as well. It is quite a substantial toolkit with guidance on a whole range of issues, and so it would be really great to see a full draft of the new SWEP policy following the incorporation of that guidance, and for that policy to be publicly accessible when it's ready. But thank you again for inviting me to speak. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And could I please now ask the petitioner, Serene Shibley, I hope I've pronounced that correctly. Thank you. To make any comments on the Cabinet response, and once again, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Amazing, as well as a big thank you to Bridge Plus, MAP Shelter and Norfolk Community Law Service and all those who did the work and bring the motion here today. I'm glad to see Cabinet has accepted much of the motion, especially introducing more flexibility into why and when SWEP is being triggered. This is vital to ensuring SWEP can do as intended in stopping people sleeping out in unsafe conditions. I'm also glad to see an assessment on how it is carried out against the Homeless Link Toolkit, and I look forward to learning about the new updated SWEP policy on the council webpage, and that you will be working with local districts to encourage them to do the same. While I am happy to read the Norwich has no verification during SWEP, I ask, was this already a policy? Because the agencies that were formally thanked in these papers report that last winter this was not the case. Has this changed since then? Or has this always been the policy? And if so, what are council planning to do to ensure that it is effectively implemented this winter? As for the winter night shelter, while I'm glad to see Norwich is prioritising best practice and a person-first approach, I worry that closing it may leave Norwich unprepared for the unforeseen. Last year, when the government shut down hotel accommodation for refugees and asylum seekers, leaving people with as little as 7 days to find alternative accommodation, leaving people, families on the streets. And so the winter night shelter acts not as best practice, but as a buffer against the worst case scenario. Similarly, I ask if there will be another physical space council will be signposting to for people to access support, especially as the out of hours number may not be viable for people with complex needs or without access to a phone. Because while prioritising single occupancy accommodation first, whenever possible, is best, have council made alternative arrangements should this not be possible? My concern is council is making the perfect the enemy of the good, when sometimes the only good option is the one that gets people off the streets and into the warm, because one person out on the streets, especially in winter, is too many. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, could I please ask Councillor Jones to move the Cabinet's response and make any comments?
Thank you. I'm really glad we've got the opportunity to bring all these different items together to give a coherent response to them. There was some really helpful discussion at the Scrutiny Committee, and it was really useful to have colleagues from, particularly from Vulnerable Adult Service, Tracy, who works there, really understands the client group we're talking about. Her first-hand knowledge of that was absolutely exceptional, and having Jan Sheldon there, really appreciated that. I think, there was a lot of stuff that I think you need to be clear that we were doing already, if I'm honest, and that was something we've been able to pull out by going and providing you very consistently with responses to each of the recommendations. I think we need to be clear in being distinct between what was a winter night shelter provision and what is SWEP, and these are two very different things. And be too clear, Homeless Link is pushes towards the idea of a single occupancy accommodation, and that's what we're all saying, and I think that's been the consistent theme, that is the ambition. So night shelter is there in SWEP. It should be a last resort option at all times anyway, but we've got options of things like spot purchasing accommodation, and we've got to be working in that person-centred way. I think there is confusion about access to it, and that who it was intended for and the funding for it was. It's not something that could be accessed on an ad hoc basis in the night shelter model. SWEP is something that is separate. We've got to be clear what we're doing, and also respect some very professional staff who are running this and do an amazing job, and I'm incredibly proud of the team, and I was really proud for the way they were able to present the information at the Scrutiny Committee, actually, of the great work they do and commitment to see a year-on-year reduction of rough sleeping in our city, which is totally bucking the national trend. We need to be looking at so many different alternatives. We can't just look at rough sleeping as a whole, we've got to look at the rise of homelessness, and we've heard about increase in refugee presentations, but we've also got increased presentations of people who are Norwich residents through and through, that we've also got to consider everyone, and we've got to look at this as a whole and the needs of Norwich, be someone who's just arrived here or someone who's lived here all their life, and they all need to be considered. And that's what we will continue to do. So we're going to continue to offer a service that looks at the needs of the individual person, and they're often complex needs. I need to sort of just clarify, I know on the last of the recommendations, there was about care assessments, and I'm assuming that was meant to be Care Act assessments, but it was towards the end of those. And I think it's not just about Care Act assessments, it's about access to drug and alcohol services, mental health services. We are one cog in a massive problem that we've got to work together to fix. We need to also maybe be clear on our expectations to people when they're engaging with our services, that when they're offered accommodation, they need to take it as well. That's some of the challenges I've had recently, is people have been offered things, declined, and there can be some confusion around that. But we will continue to work really productively with other agencies. Following the Scrutiny Committee, one of our officers has been meeting with those partners that came from NCAN individually and from Bridge Plus, I believe, And we can continue that work, because we've got to continue having a dialogue, because that's the only way we're going to address this and continue to have the positive response we do in Norwich, that is bringing those numbers down, despite however difficult it is. So I hope, you know, I'm not going to go through each bit by bit, but I would just want to say that there'd been their words get bandied around like that we're outdated, things like that. Actually, what we're doing is moving away from the night shelter model. Is actually modern and best practice. It's actually the opposite. We're looking to move forward, and we're looking to go with what Homeless Link suggests. And you look at some of the evidence that I think it was a report I read from the Salvation Army that said, you know, the vulnerability, particularly of women and people from trans community in communal sleeping, they are most at risk. And we've got to think about those vulnerabilities and make sure that people are safe. So for me, that safety is being the abiding theme through this, best practice and safety, and looking at public health recommendations, because we're talking about a vulnerable group and we need them to be safe. So I am pleased to be able to bring our response to you to both the motion, the scrutiny recommendations, and the petition. We've accepted or confirmed that we're already doing a number of these things. The one thing needs to be clear we will not be doing is a continual night shelter through the winter months, but we will be ensuring that people have access to accommodation.
Wasn't sure what you were doing, what you were signalling to me then. Does any other cabinet member wish to speak? Okay. So I will move to questions from political group leaders. In theory, they should have been submitted in advance. I recognise that you haven't had much time since I notified you. So in recognition of that, I'm happy to accept questions at this meeting. Councillor Galvin?
Can I just say, yeah, thank you for that. I didn't actually, I was aware of the weekend, so I hadn't actually, couldn't have given the 48 hours notice, because I mean, hadn't, the email arrived on Saturday morning, I think, so I think, you know, it wasn't possible for me to comply with it. So 48 hours notice seems reasonable, although I have to say it doesn't give us very long, because we only get the cabinet papers on a Wednesday. That means effectively having to get them in, you know, so I'm not sure it's that helpful really, because we only have a few days to read them anyway. But yeah, we'll do our best to try. I understand why you're asking it, but thanks for letting us ask questions today.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Wright.
I think probably not, given that we were both at scrutiny and probably used that opportunity then. But yeah, thank you very much to Councillor Jones for your response there.
Councillor Jones.
Just one of the things that got mentioned was continuing to work with those groups, and that's something, as I mentioned, Charlotte has already met with them, but we'll be continuing to, and we'll keep that continual dialogue going. I think that's very clear, and I'm keen to be involved in that as well. I haven't had the opportunity yet, but I'm planning to.
Okay, Councillor Giles.
Thanks. I just wanted to highlight that Charlotte McAllister, Housing Partnerships Manager, and Hayley Dawson, Rough Sleeping Coordinator, did attend the Financial Inclusion Consortium meeting this morning with NCAN and those VCSE advice agency partners to present on the item and discuss the matter. So there's a commitment to continue discussing these matters through that forum.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Giles. So we can now move to a vote on the recommendations. And just to confirm, before we do that, that we will be appointing the Chair of Scrutiny and the Chair of Audit Committee to NCSL shareholder panel as part of this process. So can I see all those in favour, please? Anyone against? I think that's unanimous. Thank you. That resolution has been carried. Let's move on to item 7 then, a Parks and Green Spaces strategy for Norwich, an update. May I ask, please, Councillor Hampton to move the report?
Thank you very much. And I'm really pleased to be bringing forward a draft of this council's first Parks and Green Spaces strategy, which hopefully today will approve this draft and approve it to go for wider stakeholder and public consultation. This is a strategy that will set out how we invest in and improve our parks and green spaces for the benefit of our communities, our heritage and the environment. And it will provide us with clear direction for the next 10 years. Importantly, it's also got an action plan with a tangible list of priorities and actions which we'll aim to deliver. It is a bold and ambitious piece of work, which is important both to set that direction and also to help us secure much needed further funding to allow us to be more ambitious still. We're really fortunate in Norwich to have a spread and diversity of parks and green spaces across our city, managed by the council and its partners, and including historic parks and gardens, natural green space, playing fields, play areas, allotments, community gardens, woodlands, amenity green spaces and cemeteries. These spaces between them provide opportunities for recreation, sport and leisure, socialising, community activity, access to nature and much, much more. There's overwhelming evidence for this access to parks and green spaces and the facilities that within them have a lasting economical, social, cultural, educational, environmental and health benefits, all of which are things we want to be promoting as a council. And indeed, residents have consistently told us that parks and open spaces are a top priority. And this was notably the case in the recent extensive consultation ahead of the We Are Norwich community-led plan, where this came out as the service that residents valued the most of everything put to them. So this strategy follows on from that community-led plan and the vision contained within it, that Norwich will have a network of accessible, high quality and highly valued parks and green spaces to be proud of. A lot of work has been carried out to inform the strategy and make sure it's developed in an evidence-based manner. There's been a review of local and national policy carried out, and opportunities for consultation and input have been integrated from early stages. There was an away day at Carrow Road with 120 delegates from over 60 different public organisations, local authorities, environmental organisations and other groups associated with the parks. Scrutiny Committee held a session to shape their recommendations of what should be included in the strategy, and we've accepted and incorporated these at the appropriate points. And a really significant piece of work undertaken, which underpins the aims and priorities in the strategy, was a comprehensive assessment of the quality and community value of all of our parks and green spaces, with on-site audits and analysis completed to assess maintenance, cleanliness, biodiversity, usage, recreational value and facilities, among other important factors. That was a process that reaffirms that we have a really high number, or a really good number of high quality parks, epitomised by those which have been awarded the prestigious Green Flag Award. And this year that was a record 6 parks in Norwich, Ketts Heights, Jenny Lynn Park and Higham Park getting this accreditation for the first time, joining Waterloo Park, Eaton Park and Melshold Heath, which we're delighted with. And the Green Flag Award will still be used as a measure of success, as it represents the benchmark international standard for park management. But on the flip side, we do know there are also spaces which could be delivering greater value and will need improvements, whether that's accessibility and signage, investment in infrastructure, play equipment, work to overcome general wear and tear pressures, or other enhancements needed. This strategy proposes that we focus and concentrate on those sites that are most important to us and our communities, which will need to be conserved or enhanced. A strategic hierarchy is contained within the strategy and has been drawn up to guide this process. And it sorts spaces into different categories according to their size, function and role in the community, with city parks sitting at the top level, down to community parks, then local parks, open spaces and allotments, strategic sports sites, and then green links, corridors and natural spaces. The strategy itself contains a number of objectives, including that it will create a comprehensive policy framework for the protection, enhancement, accessibility and use of our parks and green spaces. It will make sure that the quality and diversity of the environment are enhanced, as is the life of our communities, that they'll promote civic pride and social inclusion, that they meet the needs of local people and visitors, both now and sustainably forward into the future. And that there'll be a framework for voluntary and community groups to participate in the provision and management of these important spaces. This is work we will, of course, continue to lead and coordinate, but we know it's not something we can do by ourselves. We'll work with and build relationships with partners, as we have been doing, including, and of course not limited to, Outdoor Projects Network, Norwich Fin Project, friends groups, major organisations like Norfolk Wildlife Trust, and other authorities such as the County Council. Developing relationships with funding bodies is also going to be vital, and these conversations are ongoing, including detailed discussions with the Heritage Lottery Fund around a significant project to rejuvenate some of our most historic parks. So back to the recommendation that's before us today, which is that we approve this draft and proceed to consultation with the wider public and stakeholders. This is a process we intend to carry out from next month through to the start of next year, and we intend to consult widely, reflecting the importance of this issue to the public and the input lots of community groups, public, residents put back into our parks as well. We'll be making use of roadshow events and engagement at libraries, community centres, with friends groups, etc. And finally, just to say thank you to officers for all their work to get us to this point, as well as staff and volunteers more widely for all they do to maintain and enhance these parks and green spaces, which are so valued by so many people. And thank you to Councillor Giles, who until recently was the portfolio holder for this and oversaw most of the work I've just described. I just get to step in at the last minute and take it over the line. But so yeah, I recommend this to Cabinet today.
Thank you, Emma. Do I have a seconder, please? Well, Councillor Giles, why not? Seems appropriate to me. Before. After Cabinet members, yeah. In one second, or maybe two or three. But does any Cabinet member wish to speak? Beth does.
I think it's just really, it fascinated me reading this, just really reflecting on quite how much green space we've got, but also how it really influences Norwich as a city, that you kind of walk around a corner and there is green space, and that's what's so lovely about it, and really sort of one of the things I noticed moving here, but also how that has, the massive health benefit for that, and how that can be maybe built on more in future even, but by protecting that and having that free accessible space to people is so crucial. And I think, we all came through the pandemic and realised how much green space meant to us all during that, and I think maybe has heightened our awareness of it. But it's something that can't be taken for granted, and isn't whilst it's free to access in that sense, it's not free, and keeping such beautiful and to high standard green space is a challenge. But I think we realise quite how much it matters to people, and I think it was really fascinating for me reading this and really realising quite how much it is part of us as Norwich. Really, that's a comment more than a question.
Absolutely. Any other comments? Questions? Yes, Adam, Councillor Giles.
Thank you, and thank you, Emma, for bringing forward this exciting strategy, and it's fantastic to see all of the investment that's going into our parks and green spaces, really reflecting the priority that our residents, highlighted. It is to them through the community-led plan consultation. I just want to thank Paul Rabbits and all of the officers in the Parks team and Andy Summers for all of their work in supporting the production of the strategy.
Yes, they're sitting there listening intently. Thank you, Councillor Giles. There are no other Cabinet members wish to ask a question, so I'll go over to political group leaders. Who would like to go first?
Thank you. Thank you for the report and acknowledging that people really see the green spaces, the parks, as the crowning glory of the city, and that residents have made that very clear. So it's really good to see that taken seriously with the strategy that's benefited from a lot of work and input, and follows that pre-strategy report to scrutiny, and the recommendations were all taken on board, which is good to see, and you can see them in there, and it's a precursor to further public consultation again, which is really good, and the results of that consultation will come back to scrutiny in March, I believe, to Cabinet before scrutiny, as far as I could make out. It looks like it will come to Cabinet and then scrutiny. I'm not sure quite how that works, but that it looks like that from the report.
Is that the question?
No, it's not. The question's coming, sorry. So it says we'll consult widely within communities and stakeholders with a series of roadshows across the city, and it details a bit about that. But I'd like to just get a little bit into the detail of the consultation, because I know you know how much listening to people is a priority. So last year's Get Talking consultation on the budget got 281 responses, which was just 0.2% of the city. That was a Get Talking one, which was down on the average of previous budget consultations. And the corporate plan consultation, I think we found at scrutiny hadn't actually talked to any young people for various reasons. So I wanted to ask, I'm assuming you've had oversight of the frame of this consultation coming forward, because it's going to start sort of in a couple of weeks' time. So how the sampling frame, etc., is working to make sure that young people are included in the consultation, because I'm sure we all know that young people are key users of parks, and they haven't always been listened to so far. So just like a bit more detail perhaps outside the meeting on that.
Would you like to defer to officers?
I'm happy to do a bit of both.
Okay, do a bit of both. Okay.
If anything,
Yeah.
anything I've
Okay.
missed that officers want to add in,
Okay.
but no, we recognise that's a challenge. It's a difficult cohort to reach out to, and I think our efforts and recent consultations have been better, or started to reach more people. Social media is obviously useful for a younger cohort, and obviously we can all help share that message as widely as we can. And I think this is sort of picked up in the papers already, that there will be an events-based approach, taking consultation out to the places where the parks users and community members who care about this are going to be, as in the parks themselves, libraries, places where you will attract younger people with younger families, parks users. But any further suggestions you have about how to reach out to that cohort, please do send them our way.
Thank you. Andy, would you like to come and Paul come to the table?
Thank you. I can add to that, actually. Thank you. We've already started looking at some of the consultation, particularly with young people, and we've been engaging with the young commissioners at the YAP, I think, is it called. They approached us a wee while ago through Max Griffith's team around one of their mandates that they're working towards, is about the right to play. So we've been liaising with them. So I'm in touch with them about how we engage with them as far as the strategy is concerned. So it's not just about right to play, but about right to access to green spaces as well. So that's something that's definitely in hand, and recognise the fact that we do need to engage with young people better.
Thanks, Paul. Andy, did you want to add anything? I said it all for you. You could have saved your energy. Okay, James.
Thank you. Actually, mine's a comment rather than a question, but hopefully it will be allowable. There's a couple of things about this report that have really interested me. One of which is I guess, by focusing on green spaces as well as parks, it identifies, particularly around cemeteries, the sort of societal change in terms of the way people use our green spaces that are cemeteries. And in fact, I think Councillor Galvin and I commented recently on noting Jenny Lay as we do our regular route around.
How were you talking about?
Yeah, Earlham Cemetery. And I think that it's really useful, because it having a strategy like this gets people out into all of those spaces, not just the parks. And the other point I wanted to make, and to offer a thank you to Cabinet and the Council on behalf of the 1,000 or so people who every weekend do some form of park run, whether it be an adult one or a junior one, because actually that's something that is an add-on and something the council provides free for those people. And I think it's not just going along to a park in an open space and using it. It is the fact that there is this other work that the council's doing to enable these things to happen. Lots of young people on a Sunday at 9 o'clock. If you want to, they're the very younger end of the young, but if you want to engage with them, there. Thank you.
Very happy for you to take the lead. Item 8 is the revised statement of community involvement for 2024. I'll move the report. Statements of community involvement are codes of practice for setting out how councils intend to involve people in planning decisions. They cover decisions in relation to both planning policy and planning applications, and are required under Section 18 of the Planning and Compulsory Act 2004. They're required to be updated every 5 years. I can't believe it's 5 years since we last did this. It seems like yesterday. Our latest SCI was adopted in November 2020, and since then there have been key changes in the local and national planning context, which means that ours is now due for a further update, and a summary of this changing context is set out up from paragraph 4. A number of the proposed planning reforms have not yet been enacted, and the current government is consulting on further changes to the planning system. Therefore, this version of the statement of community involvement has been prepared on the basis of the current policy context. The lifetime of this version, therefore, may be limited given the anticipated planning reforms. However, the document will be kept under review and updated as necessary. So Cabinet is asked to authorise a public consultation on the draft revised statement of community involvement. Following the consultation, the SCI will be amended as necessary in accordance with any comments received and reported back to Sustainable Development Panel before being reported to Cabinet for adoption. Sarah has joined us. Is there anything you would like to add, Sarah?
No, thank you, Chair. Very expertly covered.
Okay, are there any, do I have a seconder for this, please? Councillor Hampton, thank you. Would any Cabinet members care to comment? I think everybody's happy in that case. So I'll move on to questions from political group leaders. So would you like to go first this time, James? No? Lucy?
Thank you. Yes, I do. Yeah, thanks for the report. I know I feel the same. I was a bit amazed to see it again. Time does fly, doesn't it? So it's got a lot in it that's really interesting, obviously, and important. As loads of different questions I could ask, and maybe I will send some. But the DM policies plan sets out obviously the detailed planning policies. It's really important for the city, and a review was carried out in 2019. The report says. It concluded they were fit for purpose for the current time. A second review will be completed late in 2024. It says, and given the changes to the planning system referred to, the council will consider the future of the current DM policies following the introduction of national development management policies. So, but residents of recently, so I want to be a bit more specific now and just ask a question about how that impacts real practice. Residents recently wrote to me and asking why Norwich City Council is allowing new build properties to continue being built with gas boilers. So bear with me, I'll just say what they said. I'm just interested to ask this. They said we've been considering downsizing and saw advertised some 2-bed properties on the Riverside development.
So is this about the statement of community involvement?
Yes, it is about the DM policies that are covered. Consultation of the DM policies that are covered within this report. So if you just, I'll just finish what they said, because that was residents that asked. It's only another sentence. They claim it's impossible. We asked at the on-site sales office what type of heating that they had, and we were stunned to find they were putting in gas boilers. Some of the properties are not built yet, but they claim it's impossible to change the spec since they were approved planning wise in 2018. Even if we bought an off plan, so not yet built, we could not have an alternative heat source system put in. We made it clear we thought this is a waste of time and of no interest to us. But why are they still able to build to such low standards? I despair of authorities waking up to the need to build better for a sustainable future. It's an email I received, and I might be wrong in thinking that if we'd changed our DM policies before now, this could have been addressed and we'd already have future-proofed new homes at that site. But could you explain a bit more about how the review of the DM policies being carried out will be able to have community involvement in it? That's the link with the community consultation, because the report says there's a review of DM policies. Those are people in the community that contacted me that clearly want input to that review.
I think we got the gist of that, Lucy.
Yeah, good.
Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's several kind of things interlinked in this. So this report is really about how we will consult people, not specifically the what we will consult them on. But there are references to two kind of reviews of the DM policies in this. The first is the Regulation 10A, which will be coming before Cabinet next month, I believe, which is just about whether the policies we currently have are still up to date in accordance with the NPPF. So we'll be bringing that to you in light of changes to the NPPF recently. The further review that you're talking about was put on hold while we adopted the Greater Norwich Local Plan. There's obviously then been planning reform proposed and muting of national DM policies. So I think we've taken the decision to wait because obviously we can't replicate what comes through in national policy. So we will then take a view on looking at our policies. But absolutely, when we draft those policies, there will be 2, if not 3 iterations of public consultation on those policies. And we will be able to look hopefully at a more kind of local level about what we want to do in terms of bringing forward policy development at that time. But as I say, there will be at least 2, if not 3 stages of public engagement in the review of those policies.
Okay, thank you for that, Sarah. Okay, can we move to a vote, please? So all those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Unanimously carried. Thank you for that. Thank you, Sarah, for helping with that question. Let's move on then to item 9 now. This is joining the Norfolk Environmental Credits Limited joint venture to provide environmental credits for nutrient neutrality. And that is Councillor Packer.
Thanks. Excuse me. Thank you for that. Nutrient neutrality was introduced in March 2022 and heightened awareness of the impacts many practices have on our waterways, be that agriculture, industry, and the development industry, who build the homes we desperately need for our ever-increasing population. It is essential that we play our part in ensuring we do not allow the further deterioration of our natural environment by mitigating our impact on it. We are all too aware of the impact nutrient neutrality has had on our ability to build much needed homes for our residents and the continued impact on our economy. We've been working hard to address the need for mitigation for new overnight accommodation applications. Members will recall a paper where we considered joining the Norfolk-wide joint venture, and at that time the principle was endorsed and the revenue funding provided. But there were remaining concerns about the governance arrangements and viability of the emerging business case, which suggested it would be preferable for the council to continue to develop its own mitigation scheme at that time, rather than join the joint venture. We have developed our own mitigation scheme and are retrofitting more water efficient fittings, such as toilets, taps and showers, into our own housing stock to help unlock developments. But we always knew that our scheme wouldn't be enough. I remind members that when we agreed to start this scheme, it was proposed to deliver enough mitigation for around 1,412 new dwellings. This is clearly less than the backlog of accommodation of nearly 2,000 homes. Our scheme is necessarily taking time to deliver, and we must therefore find alternative solutions to unlock development. Exempt Appendix D in your papers sets out clearly the finely balanced decision we must make this evening and why it is now recommended that we seek to join the joint venture. The benefits of getting developments in Norwich underway are considered to outweigh concerns, especially given our commitments to significant regeneration schemes across the city. Our influence over the company and its business planning will be greatly enhanced by being a member authority. So in my view, I believe we must take this opportunity and get Norwich building again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Packer. Do I have a seconder, please, for this item? Anybody? Councillor Hampton, I saw first. Thank you for that. Does anybody wish to speak on the exempt item? Or ask any questions? No? Okay. Do I have any cabinet members who wish to speak? Councillor Jones.
Just really glad for bringing this forward. We know what the need for housing is, but also that there does, we need practical solutions to mitigations. I suppose my disappointment is beyond us, and it's wandering on a national level. Actually, is just focusing on what we can do as local authorities really enough to clean up rivers? Actually, there's a whole bigger conversation and about people that pollute them more than this does, but that's a whole other conversation. But a frustration, I suppose, that it's focusing, maybe we're being asked to focus quite narrowly when actually there are other things that could, we really value our rivers. They're a massive part of the city and we want them to be the best quality they can, and it should be a bigger conversation had nationally and hopefully by those bodies on a national level of who can influence the water quality and beyond just looking at this as what I see as quite a narrow thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Jones. Any other Cabinet member wish to comment or ask a question? No, in that case, I'll move to political group leaders. I saw Councillor Wright first.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this is a really important report to come today, and we're talking about the ability to build homes for people. So my question relates to how rapidly the backlog of planning consents can be unlocked, which I think would be really good if it can happen quite quickly. But actually, secondly, and maybe this is a question that's outside of the council's concern or area of influence. Are we worried that it might end up distorting the market, because when lots of consents arrive at the same time, there'll be a lack of trades in order to carry out that work? And is there any thought process around that? Thank you.
Really good question. So Councillor Packer, first of all, and obviously Sarah is still at the table if need be. So Matt.
I think I would like things to start as rapidly as possible without. We need to be careful, as you say, because we can't have all applications going through immediately. I wouldn't expect that to happen. It will be in a planned approach. I think I'll defer to Sarah for her expertise on that, if I could. But I think what we need to do is ensure that there is work there for trades, for companies, for individuals, especially local traders. Especially there, I've spoken to many people, including companies with 1 or 2 employees in there, so it's been very challenging for them. So I see this as a positive opportunity that we really can get Norwich sort of building the homes we desperately need. Sorry, Sarah.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Packer, and thank you for your question, Councillor Wright. In terms of kind of how quickly, I think that's kind of a bit of an endless question at the moment. We obviously, following any decision here today, then need to speak to NEC and get our joining kind of ratified through their board and their member board. So that in itself will take some time. And obviously there's then some conversations around, they have a credit allocation policy which they'd need to revise to include us. So there will be a slight time delay. But from conversations I've had, they're quite committed to us joining and they want Norwich to be part of it. So I'm hoping we can get development away as quickly as possible. In terms of that kind of impact on the market, some of our neighbouring authorities who are already members are issuing consents. The kind of market in terms of actual build is quite difficult, as we know. Build costs have increased over many years. The thing we need to do is get the permissions there to enable people to start as quickly as possible. And then, dare I say it, actual delivery is to some extent market driven, but definitely something that we can consider with NEC if we join.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thank you. Yeah. So we developed this scheme rather than going with the wider scheme, and it was a good one to do it by retrofitting bathrooms, etc. But it wasn't successful. The report states that only 9 have been granted using the Council's own mitigation scheme, and there's over a backlog of over 2,000 residential consents. So I hope joining the new scheme can help us catch up really fast and ensure, really importantly, ensure protection of our rivers. But on reflection, given our stated aim to work in partnership, was it a mistake to go it alone?
Well, I can't speak for the councillors at the time who made that decision, because I don't think I was an elected councillor. I think hindsight is a wonderful thing. I think we have to be very careful and responsible with what we get involved with, and where there are concerns, we have to take those into account. And I think that was what happened at that time. So I think taking a careful approach is something that I'd always recommend. Having spoken to Sarah, looking at what there is at the moment, I think it's a very positive way that we can move forward, that we can have an influence on there and make sure that we can get building things as quickly as possible so that we can get those homes which are desperately needed.
And I think, yeah, we did have concerns, and I think we're right to be cautious when we have concerns. But also, my understanding, as I recall, is that some of those consents that you referred to are for an awful lot of units. So it's just not the number of consents; it's actually the amount of units which have been approved through those consents. Do add, Sarah. I mean, it's a political question, so I understand you might be cautious. But if there's anything you could say, please do.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's reference to 9 permissions. One of those obviously was Anglia Square. So we are talking about, having permitted our kind of top 10 or 9 of our top 10 sites. That does represent several hundred homes.
Yeah, thank you for the actual figures there, Sarah. That's much appreciated. Okay, so we'll now move to the vote. We've got a seconder? Yes. So all those in favour? Oh, beg your pardon.
Sorry, Councillor Standard. There's one very minor change to the recommendation, if I may. Just to recommendation 1, it should read that we agree to seek to join Norfolk Environmental Credits. As I said, any decision we make here today, we then obviously need to be ratified by the NEC board. So I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you.
That's a really important point. Yeah. Okay, all those in favour? As amended. Thank you. That's unanimous. That is passed. Let's move on now to item 10, Norwich City Hall Reimagined. May I ask, please, Councillor Kendrick to move the report.
Thank you, Chair. Our stunning Grade 2 listed building has been the seat of local government since 1938. As custodians of this treasured asset, we must ensure it is protected and fit for the future. The reality is that this wonderful building we spend in the region of £2 million a year, a figure that will only increase in time to maintain it. Staying as we are and doing nothing is simply not an option. And by addressing this, we have the opportunity to rethink the purpose and uses of a building in a way that benefits our entire city. The strategic outline case to reimagine City Hall has been identified, the potential to create £102 million in economic benefit for Norwich as a whole, depending on the scale of option taken forward. This represents a huge opportunity for the council to not only create revenue, but to create a future for a building that has far wider benefits for the city as a whole. We know we must make the best use of this building to provide inclusivity and accessible services and allow council colleagues to work in a more open and modern way. And we must realise these benefits while reducing the environmental impact of the building and moving us closer to our net zero targets. We are at the start of this journey, and the strategic outline case has considered a wide range of possible future uses for this building, identifying the variable options. We are now considering taking to the next stage. The next stage would see the development of the options with a full outline business case, setting out a clear route to delivering change at City Hall. It will provide us with many architectural, technical and financial reports required for a building of this nature to move to the planning, procurement and construction stage. This year we are conducting an extensive public consultation for our new community-led plan, which demonstrates support for City Hall to provide the opportunities for growth and better outcomes for the city. We also held a workshop with partners from key organisations across Norwich to explore the opportunities for City Hall to contribute to the city's economy. This has fed into a strategic outline case and reinforced that City Hall building is a cherished heritage asset for the city that people would like to see become more open and accessible. We have simply not assumed that the public will want, as the project is still, we cannot assume what the public will want, as this project is still at an early stage. If the Cabinet agrees to take the options forward, the full business case wider engagement will take place with residents, businesses, partners and the voluntary and creative sector. We are clear that if this work progresses, consultation will be vital to making the right decisions for the city, and the people of Norwich will be fully involved. Last week I had the pleasure of presenting this report to the scrutiny committee, and I should hasten to say there were a series of questions from members which I think were very useful. I, as always, of course, made a reasonable responses, and I should hasten to say at this point that the leader of the council also made a series of very reasonable responses to those questions too. Thank you very much. I will now hand over to the officers if there are any further questions.
Thank you, Councillor Kendrick. Do we have a seconder, please? Okay, Claire, your turn. I saw you. Yeah, okay. Mark, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so, no.
Okay,
No.
fine. You would stay with us for questions just in case. Thank you. Are there any questions from cabinet members? No. Okay, so I'll move to opposition group leaders. I'm not sure whose turn it is to go first. Go on, James.
Thank you. I just really wanted to actually speak as chair of scrutiny. We had a very wide-ranging discussion last Thursday about this item. What was interesting, I think, despite varied views in the room, we came to a consensus decision at the end, and there was unanimity from the committee in moving forward. As Councillor Kendrick has said, we are custodians of this building, and I think it's very clear. It was very clear to the committee that doing nothing isn't an option. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, James. Lucy.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the reports. I'm left wondering by them why it's taken so long. Sort of since 2018, I think there have been at least 9 reports and no less than 7 different consultants brought in to consider options for City Hall. And I hope those reports have all been factored in. And how much has that cost so far before this cost?
I clearly don't know the answer to that question off the top of my head, and I'm not sure whether Mark will either. But if not, do you know, Mark, or we can let Lucy know?
I couldn't give you an accurate figure off the top of my head, no, I'm afraid.
But we can let you know that. Thank you. Okay, in which... All those in favour, please. That is unanimous, and that is carried. We now move to item 11, which is exclude. Mark, did you want to say something? You're looking. Oh, so you looked as if you're about to say something. Okay. Okay. Item 11, exclusion of the public. I'll move that we exclude the press and public from the meeting during the consideration of items on the grounds that it involves a likely disclosure of exempt information as specified in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, or it being confidential for the purposes of Section 100A(2) of that Act. Do I have a seconder? Beth, thank you very much. All those in favour? Thank you. That's unanimous. That is carried. We'll now take a quick break while we wait for the live stream to be switched off.